It is uber impressive on its own to even make the NBA. Then you take it to the next level and you start getting some real rotational minutes. Then one might break into the starting lineup, and by that point, a player has accomplished what many have tried to do and failed in becoming an NBA starter in a league with the best of the best in the world. They cemented themselves as one out of 150 players globally who find themselves on a starting spot on opening day. Then, if an individual becomes even greater, they become an all-star, an even rarer mark. And then after that, there's All NBA, there's MVPs. These are very impressive in their own right, and the list only keeps going. It just gets harder and harder because of how much talent there is that you have to go up against. And the best of the best hoopers oftentimes fail to become even a one-time MVP. Now imagine being the 42nd pick in the draft and not only becoming a three-time MVP on perhaps a pursuit of a fourth, an NBA champion, but also cementing oneself as an all-time great among the best big men of all time and the best passers of all time. And those two things aren't necessarily intertwined. Usually best passers, they're a little bit smaller. It's one thing to become an all-time great, but to do it from being a second-round pick and with a playstyle that is directly unique to you, we will never see another player like Nikola Jokic. First off, I want to rattle off some accolades because those are some heavy statements that were just made. Nikola Jokic is 30 years old. He is a 7-time NBA All-Star, 6-time All-NBA team member, and a 3-time MVP as well as an NBA champion and Finals MVP. When it comes to discussing all-time accolades, often your trophy case might be the first thing that comes to mind. You think of the Michael Jordan and LeBron James debate. Oftentimes, one of the primary arguments in favor of Jordan is the fact that he went 6-0 in the NBA Finals. And as great a defender as LeBron was in his prime, he never got a Defensive Player of the Year award like Jordan did. You look at Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain put up eye-popping numbers, perhaps the best that we've ever seen. But when you look back on that era, Bill Russell won 11 NBA championships in 13 seasons. And with that, his standing all time is not just comparable to Wilt Chamberlain, but oftentimes perceived as greater. His individual numbers were very impressive in their own right, but that trophy case getting so full only adds to his legacy. And then we get to Nikola Jokic here. And I would like to draw a comparison to Russell Westbrook. These are two players who are very well known for their aptitude in acquiring a triple-double. You look at the counting stats, you look at the box score, they are both very high-level scorers, as well as elite playmakers and rebounders for their respective positions. But Russell Westbrook never won a ring by being the cornerstone for a team. Nikola Jokic did that. Russell Westbrook has 1 MVP, Jokic already has 3, and now he might be pursuing a 4th. There's levels to it, and accolades only further your legacy, and they are a great indicator of how we are going to look at a player all time when they retire. And for Jokic, in regards to being a player that we may never see anything like him again, the fact that he is even in consideration for a 4th straight Most Valuable Player award, not 4th straight, 4th of his career, that is nearly unheard of. It's a mark that so few players ever achieve. And Jokic is there. Jokic is on the cusp of doing so. And in regards to a championship, he's only got 1. But in the modern NBA, it is so difficult to do so. You think of some recent all-time greats who have gone their entire careers without winning a ring. James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul, your most recent Hall of Fame inductees in Dwight Howard and Carmelo Anthony. All-time greats, legends of their craft that never reached the biggest stage and won it all. And Jokic did just that in a league that is only getting more talented, where there is so much parity to the point where there are calls for expansion to just level out the talent a little bit. In that league, it is so difficult to win at the highest level. But if you're going to establish your legacy, you have to do so. And Nikola Jokic did just that. And with his IQ for the game, he could well not be done. So with so much success already, Nikola Jokic is already in a tier that only a select few have ever reached. And he's only 30 years old. He's not done. And if he wins a 4th MVP, whether that's this year, whether it's in the years following this season, he joins elite select company in Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, Michael Jordan, and LeBron James. Not just among the all-time greats, not just among, the top 50 players in NBA history. No, among the top 10, the best that we've ever seen play the game. And even with only 3, he's among the likes of a Larry Bird. And with the league as talented as it is, it might be a while before we see another 3-time MVP winner. They don't come around. They don't grow on trees. And you get to his championship, of course. As the primary player on his team, he's expected to be the finals MVP, but those aren't always guaranteed either. You look at the most recent NBA champions in the Boston Celtics, Jason Tatum is widely regarded as the best player on that team, but you know who the finals MVP was? Jaylen Brown. You go back to 2015 with the burgeoning Golden State Warriors. Andre Iguodala was the finals MVP. So that's not always guaranteed. So winning that is just yet another honor. And at 30 years old, his legacy and his accolades already stack up among the best of the best. And he's got at least 5 years to add on even more. Oftentimes, especially in this year's MVP race, when it's as close as it is this year between SGA and Jokic, there's a lot of nitpicking and a lot of criticism for maybe just one bad play. And in turn, someone on NBA Twitter, they look to shift the argument in favor of their vote for MVP. And with that, with the advent of social media and the manner in which it can shift public opinion, it is very difficult to become even a one-time MVP, but to win multiple, that's even more impressive. And there are always going to be debates about the strength of eras and what that means for a player's legacy. But in terms of talent and social media, talent regarding the teams you're facing, social media regarding the narratives that you're facing, this may well be the hardest one to get some accolades going for yourself. And Jokic has done more than that and become a multiple-time MVP and an NBA champion, something that so few players ever achieve, in already establishing an all-time legacy for himself. Then we get to the manner in which Jokic is doing this. How is he becoming this celebrated player with a decorated history, a decorated trophy case? Because when we talk about how unique Nikola Jokic is, there are other 3-time MVP award winners. There's not a lot, but there are others. There are other NBA champions. But the way in which he accomplished these goals is unlike anything that we have ever seen before. In recent years, with many prospects, there has been the label of a unicorn. This big man who might be able to shoot the ball well, might be able to dribble the ball well, just do stuff that you don't really expect to see from a big man. And with that, they are labeled a unicorn as this kind of rare thing. But no one fits that definition better than Nikola Jokic. As a center, you are expected most often to be the play finisher. Any other center on this roster, and it would be someone like Jamal Murray setting him up with alley-oops and just plays in the post that are designed to get a shot off, not necessarily to look for others. But with the manner in which the center position has been played for so long, when the ball is in the big man's hands, there are a lot of eyes on stopping him from scoring. And what Jokic did, he exploited that in a way that no one else has done to the level that he has. He became an elite passer at the 5 spot. And you think of the all-time greats at the center position, Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem, Shaquille O'Neal. One thing that doesn't come to mind with them is their passing. But you look at someone like Wilt Chamberlain in particular, his most successful seasons, not individually, but as a team, were those in which he passed the ball more. And Jokic has kind of carried on that success of the passing big man, but to an even greater extent, he has exemplified that and made it the primary factor of his game. When you talk about Nikola Jokic, you have to talk about his passing, his playmaking chops, because that is the greatest thing that he brings to the table as an NBA player. And at that 5 spot, that is arguably the last thing that one should expect out of him. You might expect a post scorer, you might expect a great defender, a great rebounder, but a passer, that often doesn't come to mind. But Jokic's IQ for the game allows him to utilize advantageous positions in the post as well as his size to spot passing lanes that might not even be all that open and thread the needle. And that is so impressive by itself. But throughout NBA history, there have been players who have maybe carved their own path and kind of broken the mold of their position. You look at the 2 greatest point guards of all time in many people's eyes in Magic and Steph Curry. Magic was this traditional pass first point guard. Steph Curry was a lot more score first and ask questions later. And Curry revolutionized the game. So what makes Jokic even more unique than Curry? It's not just that he defined a legacy for himself by his play style being different among his position, but no, that legacy is not just among the greatest big men of all time, but it is among the best passers of all time. Because when you think of the best in the world, generational talents at playmaking, point guards are the players that are going to come to mind. Magic Johnson, John Stockton, Steve Nash, Chris Paul. Before Jokic, the closest thing that one might get to a big man was LeBron James as something of a point forward, but Jokic has taken yet another leap and become an all-time great passer at that center spot. Not only an all-time great center, but an all-time great at a skill that isn't necessarily commonly attributed to his position. And people follow the winners. So with the success that Jokic has had, we've seen other players come into the league or even players who kind of develop their play style to be more of a playmaking hub as a big man. Think of Domantas Sabonis or Alperen Sengun. But nobody does it to the manner in which Jokic does it. Nobody does it to the caliber that Jokic does it. Nobody is on the tier, the island of Jokic. He passes as well as just about anyone else in the history of the league, in doing so at a spot where it breaks convention. And that is how great Nikola Jokic is as a player. He didn't get those accolades by accident. No, he is a unicorn in every sense of the word and a generational player. Lastly, what are the implications here? Why is it so important that we recognize how great Jokic is and the fact that we may never see another player like him? And the answer lies in this year's MVP race. Because, as stated earlier, there is a lot of criticism that can be directed at a player just in favor of advocating for another to become the most valuable. Whether it's calling SGA a free throw merchant or saying that Jokic already won 3 and his team's not doing as well as OKC, so therefore give Shea the MVP. But the NBA and basketball as a whole is not something that should necessarily be nitpicked and negatively kind of perceived. This is where the best in the world put their talents on display, and to be able to watch them is such a treasure. With the rise of social media, whether it's trolls on NBA Twitter or people being serious, Oftentimes, a lot can be lost in favor of just having an argument, having a debate. But in doing so, sometimes the fact of the matter is that we lose what we love about the game. And even when you're breaking down the flaws of a player, it's from a place of one wants to see the game be played a certain way, or one doesn't necessarily feel as though another player is getting the respect that they deserve. And in the midst of endless discourse, I think it is so important. That's what I tried to do here on State of the Association. It's so important to just take a step back and reflect and appreciate these all-time greats, because so often an individual can forget to do just that, caught up in this discourse, especially in this year's MVP race. Just appreciate greatness while it's still here, because someday SGA is going to be retired. Jokic is going to be retired. We're going to have memories of them, but we can't see them nightly anymore. So to recognize how great they are in the moment, in the caliber of all-time talents that we are seeing, and we are so blessed to watch as some of the greatest of all time grace our screen, step foot on that hardwood court. There's nothing better than that. And that's what makes the NBA so beautiful. These players have mastered the game. And some of them might be a little bit inconsistent. Some of them might be a little bit inefficient. But their talent is second to none. And they work their entire lives for this. And in the midst of arguments, in the midst of debates, we can so oftentimes forget that. And for Nikola Jokic, this year in particular, there have been a lot of question marks about him, about why maybe he shouldn't win or he should win his fourth MVP. But at the end of the day, just taking time to reflect and realize the caliber of player that he is, and recognizing that we will never see another player like Nikola Jokic, that allows you to appreciate his game even more in the moment. Because the best times and the memories, those come when you have a positive outlook and a positive perception. And so much of media nowadays is negative, and that's why it's so important to highlight how great Jokic is. It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things who wins MVP this year. That's somewhat trivial, right? Because these are two players competing at a very high level, and some of the best players that we are ever going to have the fortune of watching. And so with that, not just Jokic, but every player in the NBA, I think it's important to just take time to appreciate. Whether it's your favorite player or a player that maybe you have criticized in the past. But for number 15 in particular, through his accolades and his very unique play style, there's never going to be another one like Nikola Jokic. That's all for today's episode of State of the Association. Thank you very much for listening.